And we welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Friday, September the 11th. I'm Gary Stevens. We will return to open line and more about your reminiscence of September 11th a little bit later on in our program after the 11 o'clock news block. But on the second Friday of the month, we bring on members of the Allegan County Board of Commissioners, the two men who represent the far northwest corner of the county, which means the immediate Holland area. Board Chairman Jim Storey and former Board Chairman, but current Commissioner Dean Kapenga. They are joining us via the Zoom connection. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome back to Talk of the Town.
Good morning, Gary and listeners.
Thank you very much for joining us. And if you have a question for these gentlemen, they'll be happy to answer it at 395-1450, 395-1450. I would be remiss on September 11th not to ask each of you gentlemen your thoughts. What went through your minds? Where were you? What went through your minds on September 11, 2001? I'll begin with Board Chairman Jim Storey.
Well, thank you, Gary, for bringing that up. Where I was actually near you, Gary. I was driving between Mount Pleasant and Saginaw. I was liquor control commissioner then, and on our way to a hearing in Saginaw when I heard the radio broadcast of the events as they unfolded. And in terms of my thoughts, I just have to say in this current debate about our public safety personnel, I just recall that the very first people at the scene, the people who ran into those burning buildings and risked their lives, and many of them lost their lives, were uniformed police officers of various jurisdictions, city, port authority, federal officials, and of course the members of the fire department of the city of New York. And in that context, we have to recall, if this were to happen to again or much smaller emergencies, who would be there to respond?
As for you, Dean Kapenga?
Well, I was home, and I think as many of your listeners would just relate to the fact of just horror, as far as to see people that were losing their lives, people that were just in disarray, and just the shock of that, and then to think of all the I know just in my prayers this morning, just to think of all the people who have lost loved ones within that are looking at this day just in such grief, but I would just echo what Commissioner Storey just said, as far as, my line of work for 30 years was law enforcement and helping people, trying to help them and be a safety net for our communities, and just to think of what the people in New York did. But Jim and I both get a chance to see the reports every day of what our local law enforcement in our area, in Ottawa and Holland and Allegan, what these gentlemen are doing just to give us safety within our communities, and are there to help people, not to hurt them. And we just want to echo what Jim just said, but obviously our prayers are out to the many people who lost lives on this day. And it is a day to remember.
395-1450, 395-1450. And obviously today being September 11th, we wanted to touch upon that with Allegan County Commissioners Jim Storey and Dean Kapenga before we talk about some county matters. And since last we chatted, the election of August has now been certified, and the votes came in. And thanks to an aggrieved elector, the Holland votes were counted eventually, and the not only the medical care facility millage, but also the conservation district millage passed by the margins for the most part of the four districts and the four precincts in Holland that didn't have it on their ballot last month.
Well, Jim, I don't know if you want me to start here, but I'll first be thrilled to start. About maybe a couple of weeks before this vote took place, we had the director of the medical care facility, and Jim and I often get a chance to tour the medical care facility, knowing it's a 5-star facility that is so much helping people. And the director just almost in tears described to us what COVID has done with people with masks on, helping people that can't see smiles, and how tough it's been for that group, but also financially, how they were just distraught in not knowing how to function. So I know Jim and me both this morning in our conversation and before this, we're just going, Holland community, thank you for the votes that you placed in keeping the restoration of the medical care facility that is helping so many people. I mean, it's just a tribute to Holland that they could see the bigger picture of how this tremendous place, if you were to go through it, you'd be so proud of it as far as how they take care of people and how well it's done. But it would not have been done without these 4 districts in Holland passing it. And I know we could say much more even with the conservation district, but especially the medical care facility. It is such a tremendous place, and we can't thank you enough for the votes that you placed in favor of it. It's just a great celebration that I know Jim and me and many others have.
Yes, I can't do anything more than echo what Commissioner, my friend Dean Kapenga has said. For those who of limited or no means near the senior stages of their life, this is a wonderful facility that our county has provided for literally many, many decades. And this vote was crucial to keeping that promise going forward for many to come. And as Dean outlined, hearing what isolation these people were in, the residents, during COVID, and the ability of the staff to provide some means of social contact to keep up their spirits, in addition to taking care of their physical needs, is just awesome. And the medical care and conservation district millage is passed by 3-to-1 margins in the city of Holland, and that was enough to keep these both going.
And unfortunately, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dean.
And Jim, I think maybe you should say something about our prosecutor, because both of us were just champions for our prosecutor, because we know the great job she has done, but you've been especially part of that. And I'll let that opening to you, because we're so happy that she's there, because she's done just such a stellar job for us, being the head prosecutor of the County of Allegan.
Thank you, Dean. And yes, I did want to talk about the recount that was done last week. And it's not just about the prosecutor. Myrene Cook was won on election day by 19 votes, and as a result of the recount, that margin stayed at 19 votes. But more importantly, I was there for all 3 days of that recount, and it's just a marvel. They had 31 township and city clerk staff, and more importantly, the volunteer inspectors who work election days year in and year out. They assembled to go through the 18,000 ballots that were cast in the August primary to make sure that it was indeed a result that you can have confidence in, was counted accurately. But the professionalism of those people and our county clerk staff in setting up the recount, and the Board of Canvassers themselves, those are volunteer positions, in ensuring their knowledge of election law and what counts in a disputed ballot situation and what doesn't. It's just a marvel to watch. And on top of it, they unfortunately had to encounter a lot of objections from some of the people associated with one of the candidates, and they still kept their cool, overcame those, answered those, and proceeded forward. So to sum up, the recount of all those ballots resulted in Myrene K. Cook being declared the nominee of the Republican Party for prosecutor. There is no Democratic candidate this year, so she will be our prosecutor. And she, as you say, Dean, you've worked with her much more closely over the years when she was assistant prosecutor, and you were one of our great deputy sergeants and detectives. The high degree of professionalism she has. So we're very happy with it.
395-1450, 395-1450. If you have a question for Allegan County Commissioners Dean Kapenga and Jim Storey, a couple of things. First of all, I was going to mention before we talked about the prosecutor's race recount was the fact that this is National Recovery Month. So the first topic about the medical care facility, let's just say it was apropos that the vote came in. Secondly, though, how concerned should people be about some of the problems that came up with the recount in terms of the ballot handling by some of the precincts that prevented them from being recounted and has led Mike Villar, the challenger, to take the matter to court?
Well, I don't, first of all, I can't predict what any court will do these days, but I think the election law, according to what both the clerk and the chairman of the Board of Canvassers and former staff of the clerk's office have said, the law is pretty clear. When the canvassers have certified the election, that's it. The decision has been made. But we'll see. Courts have found other ways to get involved. But to your question, Gary, I don't think you should have any concern about it. You know, the ballot, the one issue that Mr. Villar hung his hat on was Fillmore Township. And even though the recount of those ballots didn't count in certifying the election because of the handling, they did recount all the ballots, and the result was one more vote for Mr. Villar, and I think 2 or 3 more votes for Myrene Cook. So I mean, the result is the result. And this country has experienced a lot of continuing debate over elections. But just keep in mind, the people who count those ballots, they're not Dean and me. We're not allowed in the polling places on election day. I want that fact to be very clear by law, because our names are on the ballot. We are not allowed in polling places on any election day. Which are
outside of the fact that you got to go vote yourself.
Well, in our home precinct, and I vote in Holland, and Dean votes in Manlius Township. But outside of that, we're not allowed there, and we weren't there, of course, because of that. We follow the law. But the other thing is, keep in mind, these are community volunteers that count these ballots, and they're very sincere in wanting to have it count right. And believe me, yesterday when I attended the Board of Canvassers meeting. And again, I was the only non-canvasser or non-clerk in that meeting. They spent a goodly amount of time, 45, 50 minutes, talking about how to take the lessons from this election, this primary election, and incorporate them so that we don't have these questions going forward in November. That's how seriously they take this job. They don't hand it off to anybody else. They do it themselves.
395-1450. Good morning. You're on the line with Allegan County Commissioners Dean Kapenga and Jim Storey.
Yes, sir. Good morning. This is a different question about the subject you guys are talking about, but we moved to Allegan, and you know how right now some kids ain't going to school because of this COVID thing. And there's some spots in Allegan, like on 126, right off M40. Do you know when internet will be going through those back roads? Because there's a lot of kids out there supposedly that don't have internet where they can do their school online.
Good question there, and I know that's something. Go ahead and listen over the phone there, I'll caller. But it's something that especially you, Jim, have been addressing about dealing with internet access throughout the county.
And I know a lot of my thoughts are shared by Commissioner Kapenga as well. But obviously, I'd like him to get in on it too. But the thing is that right now, expansion of internet is really a commercial enterprise. And unfortunately, because of the houses in rural counties like ours, Allegan being so far apart, it hasn't been commercially profitable. So I've been working with a number of people, both on our county staff and volunteers in our Lakeshore Advantage staff, to find ways to leverage some of the federal funds that are now available for rural areas, through acts of Congress, through the Federal Communications Commission, so that we start getting that broadband internet into rural areas. So to answer the caller's question specifically, I can't answer when. I can answer it is something that is at the top of my list of things to get done in the next 2 years, is to start that expansion of internet into our county.
Dean?
I would just say the same thing, that Jim just mentioned. And Jim, I don't know if you can recall, there was a grant that just came through that we're partnering with another county in trying to access broadband, but it is a cry from all the commissioners. I mean, all the officials within Allegan are going, we need to do this. And to think of now, the schools, the children are dependent on this with virtual learning, that it's something that has to get done. So caller, thanks for calling in. It's something that we're right on top of trying to do all that we can, but Jim explained it quite well, but we're doing what we can do.
And I'd just like to say that even if we could get these federal grants, in some cases loans, there'll still need to be a local share. And hopefully if the voters in November provide for our tax limitation reset, we will find the resources there, which we don't have now, to provide that local match.
Has the Allegan County Board, gentlemen, and this is a related question in that regard, has the Allegan County Board been in contact with the office of Congressman Fred Upton? I know he has put forward legislation that would allow the utilities to get involved with broadband and get involved with internet access, and maybe make internet access like a utility, where it is sort of like in the public trust. I don't know whether or not he has reached out to you in this particular matter, because I would think Allegan County is a part of the example he was going to have in trying to get this legislation through.
I can say yes, definitely. Dan Wedge, one of our senior civil servants in our Allegan County government, has responsibility for transportation and these types of issues. He has been in close communication with Congressman Upton's office, and is working on developing a plan along the lines that you say, is that utilities are a customer financed system, but that get the benefit of aid up front that is then paid back.
All right, real quick, and I'm going to finish up our conversation. We'll just take it right to the top of the hour, Dean Kapenga and Jim Storey. You alluded to it, Jim, a little bit earlier about something on the November ballot. What countywide issues will be on the November ballot for November 3rd? Because people are going to, it's going to be a blanket ballot. Unfortunately, it comes with the presidential year. But what countywide issues will there be on the ballot?
Well, and I'll let Dean get in on this. I'll just say the one issue that is countywide is whether to reset our tax limitation that was put in place in 1965 by the voters of Allegan County, both for the county, our general law townships, and the intermediate school district, AESA. Right now the effective inflation has eroded that limitation, so that we're really bound pretty tightly on anything new, or even keeping some existing operations. Dean?
I would just say this, many of the listeners are going to go, oh no, a new tax. This really isn't a new tax. It's something that the voters already agreed to as far as a taxable amount. And what we've seen is our budget has continually just slowly run almost like down a slope as far as our financing of many important things. And just to give just a brief window of that, I know the Sheriff's Department has gone into, we need just a detective for sexual assaults. We need a detective for domestic violence. We need a patrol deputy to fill this spot. And that list of, from prosecutor's office to victim services, would say, wait a second, because we've made those cuts because we have to be fiscally responsible. But we're looking at this tax limitation to help upright something that was agreed to a long time ago within our budget. But because the way it's set up, we have lost funds. So we're looking for this to restore some of these groups to the financial status that they were, to do the service to the community that they once had. So we are looking within this for the November vote.
Yeah. Besides the tax situation, I know because of COVID-19, some of the discussion about maybe helping to get some more funding for the Allegan County Sheriff's Department is going to be put on hold, but that's still, just because it's got to be put on hold doesn't mean it's going to go away anytime soon.
Very much so.
The possibility of that. All right, we're going to button up our conversation right now. We want to tell people we will put a link to the Allegan County website, actually the Board of Commissioners page, but actually, you go, on the home page, you'll be able to get all the stuff that you might want to need about Allegan County when we AlleganCounty.org is the website, and we'll put a link to that when we put our podcast of our conversation with Dean Kapenga and Jim Storey on our website at WHTC.com in a little bit. And, of course, we'll also put the video of the Zoom conversation that we've had with Dean and Jim. I'll link to that as well on our webpage at WHTC.com. Allegan County Board Chairman Jim Storey, Allegan County Commissioner Dean Kapenga, thank you very much for joining us today on WHTC's Talk of the Town for our monthly visit. And if all goes well, let's do this again next month.
We look forward to it as always.
Thank you very much. That is Allegan County Commissioners Jim Storey and Dean Kapenga on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.